just explain to us, why is the system not capable to make sure that the police officers who are there to look after us are actually who we think they are and could be trusted individuals?
Well, look, in the vast majority of cases, we think it is, but we constantly have to make sure that that is the case. And obviously, the awful, horrific events around the killing of Sarah Everard and that person doing it under the guise of a police officer has highlighted this concern in people's minds about whether we've got the net tight enough on vetting. Now, our lives have changed very significantly over the last decade or so. People exist online in a way they didn't before. And we need to make sure that we're finding every point of information that we can about an individual to make sure that we're getting the right people with the right values coming into policing. Now, in the vast majority of cases, I am confident that is the case. But we need to make sure that our vetting process is completely watertight, so this kind of animal can't get through again.
Morning to you, Kit. Yeah, I mean, much to talk about. Much has been talked about in the last week. We heard one constable advising that women should know more about the law. Surely the police force needs a reform right now.
Yeah, look, I totally understand where this concern is coming from, and I realise that this has presented, this issue has presented a big challenge for women, particularly in the public realm. And nobody is suggesting that the onus should be on them. What we hope is that women across the land recognise that they can trust the police, that the police are there to protect them, and in the vast majority of cases, that's exactly what they do. These are remarkable men and women who run towards danger when the rest of us are running away, who are our last best hope of safety, and so we have to stand behind them. But what we hope is that over the weeks and months to come, as we learn from the implications of this case, as the investigations conclude about what has happened, who knew what when about this man, who was involved with this man, frankly, we've had allegations about WhatsApp groups. As we learn more about that over the weeks to come, it's our moral obligation, if you like, our duty to make sure that we have all the policies, processes, the nets in place to make sure that this can't happen again, and that everybody can have the kind of trust that they want to have in the police for the greater safety of the British people.
The police have trust in the system. If you've got a colleague that you think is behaving inappropriately or in some cases maybe criminally, can the police actually report that?
Yeah, so there are internal reporting mechanisms for officers to register worrying behaviour by other officers. What we also have to make sure is that those internal processes are working really well, and that officers can report that kind of behaviour without any fear of consequence, right? That there is a protected way of making your concerns known about a fellow officer, and that works well in lots of forces. But again, this is something about which we have to pay strong attention, right, to make sure that we're constantly reinforcing our kind of protective lines, if you like, around British policing. The thousands and thousands of police officers up and down the land want that. They want to know that the profession is sound, has integrity, and is trusted. And that's what we'll help them to do. It's also worth noting that that's going to be increasingly important as the force becomes more feminised. We're up from a quarter female officers now to about a third. Many forces, as part of our recruitment drive, you'll know we're recruiting 20,000 extra police officers. Many forces now recruiting over half female officers. So we're seeing that number grow, and in particular they need to know where those reporting lines are if they see worrying behaviour by male or indeed by female officers, that they can report that. There's a new generation coming into policing, and we want them to feel fantastic about the brilliant job they've chosen to do.
Let's move on. I mean, Priti Patel has got a lot to discuss today, a lot to talk about, hasn't she? We need to talk about Insulate Britain and the protesters. Whatever anyone thinks, we're getting emails going, oh, why are you giving them airtime? Well, they're causing chaos, aren't they? To be quite frank with you. Surely more needs to be done now before somebody dies.
Yeah, no, more does need to be done. You're absolutely right. I mean, these people have found some weaknesses in the law which we want to close. Look, we recognise that the right to protest is an intrinsic part of living in a democracy. It's an important right, but it's not unqualified. And that there is a difference between causing disruption and causing damage. And we believe that these protesters have crossed that line. We've seen footage overnight, haven't we, of ambulances being blocked from getting to hospital. Someone is going to die because of these protests if they haven't already, and that can't be allowed to happen. So today you're going to hear on the conference floor some announcements about us tightening up the sentencing around disrupting particularly the strategic road network, and about us being able to restrain the activities of persistent offenders who constantly put people in danger or damage other people's livelihoods. You know, protest is one thing. But it has to be done within a democratic framework. Damaging people's livelihoods or indeed putting their lives at risk is completely another matter, and we have to take action. That's what I hope you'll hear today.
Said that they've exploited some sort of loopholes in the law. For people who are doing that, when you clamp down on it, what punishment would be appropriate?
Well, at the moment, obstructing the highway is what they call a level 3 offence, which just attracts a fine of up to £1,000 and not an imprisonment offence. What we're looking at is a series of offences that will attract a range of sentences from 6 months up to a maximum of 2 years and an unlimited fine. Yeah, we want to create a deterrent, but critically, we want to give the police the power to present these individuals immediately into court. One of the things we've found is that in these circumstances, the police now are removing these blockages very quickly, getting there in under 15 minutes most of the time. But what we're finding is that while they can be detained then and charged, they have to be released immediately. In many cases, they're going back to offend again and again and again and flouting the law. What we want to do is get into a position where those persistent offenders can be immediately incarcerated, presented to the court, and then prevented from offending further.
And Kit, just finally and quickly, we can't not ask you this. We've heard it's in the press, in the media, talk of a form of Asbos possibly being brought in. Is that a possibility?
Yeah. Yeah, it is. I mean, I think, as I say, the Home Secretary is going to talk more about that later. But we do recognise there are specific individuals who, whatever we try to do, basically just stick two fingers up to the rest of us. And we don't think that's acceptable, particularly in these circumstances where they're causing damage or indeed risk to life. And so us creating an order, effectively a little bit like an Asbos, which could be enforced by the independent judiciary, but recognising their declared intention to continue offending and constraining them from doing that is critical. Look, we all recognise the importance of climate change, and there are many ways that protest can be made and people can bring that to the government's attention. This, though, has crossed the line, and we want to take assertive action to make sure that it cannot reoccur.
Welcome to the GB News YouTube channel. You can watch us live 24 hours a day, catch up on your favourite shows and join in the conversation in the comments below.
Don't forget to subscribe and you'll never miss any of our exclusive content.